Let's start off with Gregory. What are your thoughts on the Sam Pounder firing at ESPN, defending women's sports, not getting involved by men when ESPN is citing budget cuts, as well as Robert Griffin III?
Well, they fired RG3 today. Sam Pounder, she'd been there a long time. I want to say she'd been there 12 years, which is kind of surprising. And she had her own niche. I was kind of disappointed to hear that. I watch ESPN. I don't know that RG3 brought anything special to the table. The rumor is he might wind up on the NFL Network now to replace the fired Michael Irvin. But I didn't think there was anything spectacular. They got so many guys that they run through there now. It's just not the same ESPN that we first used to pay a lot of attention to. I felt bad for Sam Pounder getting fired because she really stood up and had strong opinions. I thought she did a good job, but maybe these people will resurface other places.
Yeah, well, it's like you said, back in the day, it was always Chris Berman and Bob Lee. And there was, then there was the Patrick Oberman era. And it's just a natural turnover, I think, in that business, right?
Yeah, it evolves. People come, people go. Two of the guys that I work the closest with in the NFL have passed away. John Clayton and Chris Mortensen.
Oh, yeah.
It's absolutely stunning.
Yes.
But I just didn't think RG3 had any clout at all. I wasn't quite sure what the role was supposed to be. And he's just another guy making noise as far as I was concerned.
You know, it's also interesting, and you'll see this in a lot of sports, but I noticed it particularly in the MLB network, where they were actually interviewing Jackson Merrill. And it was the host was one woman and three former players, but all three former players were black. And I'm thinking, okay, right on, because you're seeing a lot of this sort of bringing in different people, diversity. Some might say that maybe they're swinging the pendulum too far, but I think it's a good thing to kind of build an audience of young people to get other folks on there they can relate
with
to.
recognizable names who've just retired.
Yeah,
I think that's a piece of the equation. Although too many voices, some of these podiums. Holy cow! You got 6 or 8 people on a round table. There's only one microphone that you can hear. You can't have everybody talking all over everybody. It's kind of hard.
It's hard enough with just 2.
Yeah, you're the loudest one in the room. Go ahead. Next question.
Okay, let's go to Angel. And he says, it's official. The Marlins are the new 1993 Padres.
Fire sale. That's a disaster. I just have a problem with the way Bruce Sherman's done business there. And he's got a brand new stadium, and they just don't pay their players, and they trade their players, and now he's firing everybody. Let the new general manager come in. I've never seen a day where 17 people lost their job in one day. Even in broadcasting, as bad as some of the circumstances that I've walked through and lived through and got taken out on, I don't think we fired 17 in one day.
Oh, I went through a layoff during the dot-com era where probably 50 to 60 people in one day. And it was brutal. I mean, they took out like 80% of the company. I was in the 20%. But yeah, it can be tough. This here, clearing house, he's got to have in mind his own guys. Hopefully they can step right in.
He's going to take everybody he knew in Tampa. I'm sure he is.
Yeah, and maybe cherry pick from the existing front office.
Next question.
Okay, let's go to Emmanuel. The Dodgers have 4 guys on the 60-day DL. Which players on the 40-man roster will be cut to activate Muncy, Edman, Yamamoto, and Brazier?
Well, I don't know if the pitcher is going to come back immediately. Yamamoto will be back if he does one rehab start. Edman is in Oklahoma City. Muncy just went 4 for 4 the other night in Oklahoma City. So those 3 will come back. Muncy is already on the 40-man roster. Edman, I'm trying to think if Edman was on the 60-day DL in St. Louis. I think he might have been. So he's going to have to get activated on the 40. Yamamoto is already on the 40. So they're shuttling some people. I mean, the first big name who was shown the door was Ahmed Rosario, the former Gold Glove shortstop, who they had just gotten 2 weeks prior. He was let go. Now, I don't know whether he's going to show up at Oklahoma City and just play, and somebody gets hurt, they could bring him back up. He'd have to be put back on the 40-man roster. But, they'll move some people, or you put somebody else on the 60-day DL if there's got some other guys that are injured that they might not be able to get back.
They also got rid of Paxton, so.
And Paxton got hurt.
Yeah, and he got hurt.
He tore his calf in Boston.
Yeah. So, but they'll find a way to sort of invent a 15-day injured list stint to a little soreness in the quad. Or something.
But you got to get a guy on the 40 before you can put him on the 25.
Right.
So you got to move somebody off the 40 to activate him to get him on the 40, so you could get him onto the 25-man roster. There's a lot of calculus. You got to pay attention close to it. We move on. Thanks, Em.
All right, we move on. And where was this comment here? It was about the Chargers. And yeah, here it is. And This is from King Zoe. He says, I think Harbaugh will have struggles this year, and a lot of it is only because the Chargers are just cursed.
It just takes time. I mean, they did get rid of a lot of players. I think I want to count. I think they got rid of 24 veteran players. Now they've added a lot to replace them, different types of players. I think, and I told us, I've been on some national shows asking me about it. I just believe they're at least one more draft away from being complete, and then you got to stay healthy. So they at this point in time, they got a really young wide receiver core. Those guys got to prove that they can play. They got to make sure they got the right running back in place of Austin Eckler. Though, Gus Edwards has had flashes and J.K. Dobbins has had flashes when they were both in Baltimore that they played pretty well. But they both got real injury history. Who's going to be your defensive tackle? They need somebody to play alongside Morgan Fox. They got rid of the other 3 defensive tackles. They brought in guys from Carolina. They're still bringing in guys. So the jury's still out there. I love their linebacking. I mean, from Bosa to Khalil Mack to what they've got at inside linebacker, I counted today, they got 7 linebackers who I think are players. So I think this is going to be a blitz-happy, linebacker-led defense. Secondary, they got to replace people because they let a whole bunch of cornerbacks go, but some of the guys they let go weren't playing very well. So I think it's your transition, King, and I think at the end of the day, a year from today, after another draft with Harbaugh's people and Joe Ortiz calling the shots, I think it'll be a better, deeper team. I just think there's too many issues with the Bolts right now, and they got to get the quarterback back on the field healthy.
Well, there's some comments here also about Easton Stick. Derek says, no one uses a Easton Stick anymore. Everyone prefers carbon fiber now. But what are they going to do in that backup quarterback role?
They're going to play Luis Perez against the Rams. He's going to get a long look. Now, it's kind of a cool story. He's an undersized quarterback. He's from Chula Vista. He went to, I think it's called East Texas State. It's actually Texas A&M Commerce now. But he played at East Texas State, set all kinds of small college passing records. And he's been in and out of camps. He's played in the spring leagues. He played in the XFL, played the United Football League, and played really, really well. But that's at a much lower level. I think he'll get a look-see this weekend. Easton Stick is still there. Now, I'm kind of surprised. We have not had a Kaepernick comment yet, or are you avoiding the gunfire here?
Oh, no, they're coming. They're coming. They're on the list.
You want me to duck under the table now?
Yeah.
That leads me to my theory. What about Kaepernick? You could keep him as a third quarterback and give him time to develop. You got 3 weeks to get his cardiovascular up. Why not, if you believe in the guy? Now, he's been away from it for 7 years. That's a long time to be out of pro football. But he'd be the backup, and he'd be taking a ton of snaps Monday through Friday just to be your backup, and you would get him regimented up to the point where you hope he could play. Or am I reaching too far? Is that a bridge too far, John? Go ahead.
No, I mean, it's an interesting topic, because there's still people in grudge mode about Kaepernick, America, and you're shaming the flag, and he's never going to overcome those people.
Right.
But, could he be an asset in some way to Harbaugh's organization as a coach or even as a consultant? They clearly need help at quarterback in some way, but as a player, I just think, they need to turn the page on that idea.
Okay, let's move on, see if somebody else got a different opinion here. I apologize if I hit a hot button, but that's what talk show hosts do. I thought about it, and there it is.
That's what you do. Okay, let's go to Chris here. Amazing how 16 days of Olympics has dropped Caitlin Clark to the second most dominant female athlete in the world. Rachel Gunn of Australian breakdancing is clearly the new number 1. React to me.
You're the smartest guy in the room based on your diploma up on the wall there from UCSD. How do you score breakdancing? Come on, sucker. Give me an answer. How do you score breakdancing? And when you solve that one, the other question, how do you score the underwater swimming event?
Deep questions from Hacksaw. It's just, I think of breakdancing, it's kind of an urban thing. You're out there feeling the vibe, kind of feeling it with your friends in the neighborhood. It's weird as a sport, but I would imagine, even going to your synchronized swimming, I think of Saturday Night Live skits, but it's got to be like the gymnastics or the ice skating, right? Do they present what they're going to do and the complexity and difficulty of each stunt, and then they measure how well they execute it?
That's a good answer. You should make that up on the fly.
It's amazing what comes out of me sometimes.
Well, sometimes you drink tequila early in the afternoon. Yes. Hey, by the way, speaking of Caitlin Clark, this is odd. The WNBA, because of the Olympics, it took a month's break. The second half of the WNBA season is starting this weekend. So Caitlin Clark goes back into the headlines. Isn't that weird? Do you ever imagine baseball taking a month off in the middle of the season? I don't know. Baseball says they want to be in the Olympics in 2028. How big a hole is that going to create in the schedule?
I like that idea a lot.
But everybody will be in game shape to play it.
Yeah, I think that it'll be good for, for America and all the other teams with all the stars playing MLB. But I think it'd actually be good for the league too, because some people are kind of tired of 162 games. They think it goes too long. And I know the players that aren't on Team USA will be really happy to have some time to rest and kind of get back from injury.
So keep an eye on that, because I think that story is going to evolve. Let's move on. Next question.
Okay, yeah, King has a bunch of comments here. He said it was Le'Veon Bell.
Le'Veon Bell, Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah. How'd that work out when he went to the New York Jets after a year's vacation?
Yeah, unbelievable. And Derek has to say, my Vikings are cursed.
They got problems. They're really banged up now, and that's too bad about J.J. McCarthy. And they did not know. They thought it was a minor tweak. They thought, if you go in and it's a minor meniscus, it's 3 to 4 weeks. They went in thinking the worst would be 8. It's a whole year, because evidently the tear was much more severe than they realized. That's tough, but he'll go through a learning curve academically. He'll be in all the meetings and all that. And then as he goes through his rehab, he'll get the opportunity probably the second half of the season just to get back onto the practice field, do walkthroughs, etc. So he'll gain a lot off the field in terms of intellect about being an NFL player. That's a tough blow, because he was pretty dynamic that first game.
Yeah, it was shocking when I heard that news, because I only saw the highlights. I didn't watch the game, but I don't remember him getting sacked or having a really serious injury. So it must have been a weird thing the next day.
Well, he could have gotten hit. His cleats could have caught in the turf. Running around back there, and lots of different ways to tear meniscus or tear cartilage. It's not always from getting blown up in the pocket.
Well, here's another sign that I'm getting old and we're getting old, is you see the B-roll of Kevin O'Connell on the sidelines there for the Vikings, right? And dude looks like he's still 14. Like, he doesn't even shave. How old is he? He's got to be in his 30s, right?
Late 30s, I'm sure.
Yeah. But, I'm really rooting for him. But, boy, he's a young lad still.
Boy, he's got some organizational problems, though. He's got injuries and salary cap issues. That's tough. Okay, let's move on here. Let's go to Angel. Big Ten, not going to be pretty for UCLA football. I'll be surprised if the Bruins win 4. Yeah, I think it's a good call. They were insulted. They came back from the Big Ten Media Day, Angel, insulted. They were picked 15th, to pick 15th out of the 18 schools in the conference. And the fact that he's come on, he inherits some recruits. He lost a pile. They brought in some in the transfer portal. He's got a quarterback that's hardly ever played at all. Now, if there's a strength, maybe they're going to go to single wing football. He's got all these running backs. Maybe they just had to run the damn ball. I just don't know how good it's going to be. And I'm going to be fascinated to see how this works out, because I keep hearing an undercurrent that this might not work out. I'm talking about UCLA going there and maybe getting smoked. And this whole thing, Cal, Stanford going to the Atlantic Coast Conference, that is so far-fetched. There's an undercurrent feeling. Some of these schools in 2 years are going to wake up and say, wrong decision. We'd like to come back and play in whatever the West Coast Conference looks like. And, of course, Oregon State, Washington State will be there. So if you bring back Cal and Stanford, if UCLA says, not for me, if they show up, and then you got San Diego State, Boise, Fresno, whomever they bring in from the Mountain West, now suddenly the conference looks a little bit different, because you got some more credible people in the conference coming back.
There's just so many layers to this, because it's the expense, the time, the jet lag. But imagine if you're a parent of one of these players and you're excited that your kid is playing at UCLA, and suddenly you got to make all these cross-country trips just to go see your kid. So that's brutal. It makes sense for football, but for all the other sports, they should keep it regional. Even the basketball guys prefer it more regional.
But they travel a lot in basketball, so I think they can get used to that. But football's such a different dimension. Like I said, UCLA just not real happy with the way the Big Ten's schedule laid out. They got to travel 23,000 miles for 6 road trips. That's a lot of airtime.
A lot of airtime. Yeah, let's move on here. Actually, Angel had another comment here. He says, had the Nordiques stayed in Quebec, they were going to be changing their logo from the iconic igloo to a wolf.
Well, the problem in Quebec was the devaluation of the Canadian dollar, because Canadian teams have to pay players in American money. That's the NHL bylaw. That and economics are changing. Quebec City, although it's the pride of the province, Quebec City is a smaller market than Montreal. There wasn't the corporate support there. They played in an old arena called the Colisée. It's been since replaced by, I think it's called the Olympic Arena, which is beautiful. It's like 18,000, but they don't have a franchise. Got a junior franchise, the Quebec Remparts, which is very, very successful, very popular. But the economics of that span of time kind of wrecked the franchise, and that's why they had to move. And, the league was moving franchises. The Atlanta Flames became the Calgary Flames. Winnipeg Jets had cash flow problems, money problems, that market. They moved, they became the Arizona Coyotes. And then Winnipeg wound up getting another franchise. So it was just a lot of moving at that point. I happen to think Quebec City now is a vibrant, bigger, different market than it's ever been before. And I think it'd be great for hockey to have it. But NHL didn't go to Quebec City, and they instead moved Arizona to Salt Lake City, and they hope that's going to be a good regional franchise.
Talking about logos here, how about the Hartford Whalers? I mean, isn't that a sweet logo? I mean,
it depends which one you want.
Well, it's the blue and green one with the whale fin, and it looks like an H.
But they also used to have one when I was in the World Hockey Association. I was in Cleveland, and the Whalers had a circular. It was like a lifesaver, life preserver, with the roping as the fringe. It was really kind of a cool thing with a harp in the middle of the ring. But it was a very different venue. But they were in Hartford, and then they became the Carolina Hurricanes.
Okay, that was my follow-up. I didn't know where they ended up going.
You should drink beer with me. You'd know.
Yeah, your hockey history. But going back to Quebec is still not that big of a city. I think it was only about 300,000.
It's become a much bigger region. Well, you went through Quebec.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And it was cool. A lot of really neat history there.
Anybody ever speak English to you?
No. Very little. Okay, moving on. Let's go. Actually, here's an interesting comment from Ray. He says, hey, watching from Republic, Missouri.
All right. Hey, this thing works anywhere.
It's a blowtorch signal, eh?
From Baja to the Canadian Rockies beyond. Thank you from Missouri. Hope you become a regular and tell a friend.
Okay. And and then Derek a wisecracking. This is the first time I've heard of Hacksaw. Who knew he had to go to San Diego for Nordiques news? Yeah.
We talk hockey all the time. Here's a proviso. I'm going to interject this point because on the right side of our screen, we have all the people that are in Fans Forum. It stretches from here down the hill to the street. How many people want to make remarks, snide comments, ask questions, etc. Everybody who's with us in Fans Forum, when we're done, I want you to email or text everybody in your address book, your Rolodex. Tell them about what we're doing on this podcast. We need to grow this thing at a really quick level. So do us a favor, because we're here Mondays and Thursdays, and we give you a ton of things to talk about and consider and argue with us. When we're done, just make sure you text or email everybody and say, I just found this sports podcast, 1:00 on Monday, 1:00 on Thursday. I don't ask much of you people, but we're going to ask you to do that. Just help us promote this mess that John Riley created.
It's good to have you back, man. Because I listened to you on 690 and 1090, and when you went up to LA, I kind of lost touch, but the fact that you're here on the internet, man, I mean, people are loving it. The numbers are still looking really good.
Technology is unbelievable. And this is coming from, I've told the story. I have my website. I write on it every day. John and I do this unbelievable stuff with podcasts. Then we put stuff up on a YouTube channel during a week. This is coming from a guy who's still got a Royal Manual typewriter. Do you know what a Royal Manual typewriter is? Still has a Royal Manual typewriter in his garage. I bet none of you people have a Royal Manual typewriter, do you?
Well, it's funny. You have all the old school terminology, because when we'll record a podcast, you'll say tape it.
Tape it, yeah. I know.
Okay. And then sometimes when we've had to do Zoom calls, you'll say dial in. It's like you're taking the phone and putting it on the modem like back in the 80s. Okay, here we go. Let's there was a comment here about you, which I think is good. This is from Versa. It says, you should be back on 97.3 from noon to 3. It's the worst sports radio in the history of San Diego sports. You're needed back on the radio here in San Diego. Even though you're doing a hackatua on Roberts, you're still a San Diego legend.
Well, thank you. I thought we had a great run. I still think we could do it, but you got to have somebody that wants to offer you a job and is willing to pay you to do that. The most fascinating thing that it never happened. I wish it had happened. Maybe somewhere down the road it might happen. I mean, I like working with this guy. I've never really done a co-hosted show with the coach, John Quintera, and we've kind of talked off and on. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? And we proposed it to some people, and it never got beyond first base because either they didn't want to do it or they didn't want to pay the money or whatever. But John and I would, I think, be pretty good point counterpoint arguing back and forth. Or maybe I bring Coach in here. We'll just do a three-way argument.
It would. That's a good vibe, because when we had Coach here, I really enjoyed that, because you guys have kind of similar perspectives on things, and both know so much detail about what's going on with some of these teams. I mean, that would be like a sports media, sports data lesson. It'd be like a lecture from the two of you, as opposed to some sort of interactive thing, because you're so knowledgeable.
I told Coach we'd get him back on as a co-host here. We'll try to wedge it back into the schedule.
We should do that. And I want to get more of the fans involved too.
Okay, next question. Thank you for the compliment.
Okay, let's go here to the Chargers comment from Aaron. He goes, Bosa is the Anthony Rondon of baseball. Could be a great player, but always hurt.
Yeah, he gets dinged. He plays hard, but he's always hurt. Now he's hurt again. He's got a wrist injury. They're not talking about it. Hopefully he'll be ready for opening day. But the question is, can he play a 17-game schedule? Because he's not played a 17-game schedule. But he's had all types of things. I mean, he's had knee injuries, and he's had calf injuries, and it's such an explosive position that he plays, and such a physical position too. So it's too bad. This might be his last season because he's got a massive salary cap number this year and even more next year. And you can only restructure down the contracts so many times, and then the bill comes due. It's like the wife's credit card. So, somebody may be leaving at the end of the year. It might be Mack, or it might be Bosa. It might be both. So we'll have to see if he can stay on the field this season. He's a good player. Got the wrong Bosa, though. Nick Bosa is the better player.
Yeah, I mean, he's been terrific. Now, how long Joey Bosa has been in the league for, maybe 6-7 years?
Yeah.
Because he was here in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
But Khalil Mack is an interesting guy, because he came from Buffalo?
Chicago. He's moved all over the place.
But wasn't he from the University of Buffalo?
Yes, he was a small college guy who was a late bloomer who became a real star. But he was a Chicago Bear. Then he was with the Raiders. But he's moved around the dial a lot.
But he's getting up there. He's older than Bosa, right?
Yeah, he's 33, maybe going on 34.
Yeah.
Might be his last year, maybe this year or next year, but his cap figure is monstrous too.
Well, he's got a career. He deserves what he's earning.
He's a pretty good football player.
Yeah, he is.
Okay, we move on. A couple more here before we go to social media.
Yeah, we are in social media right now, Lee. So let's talk here about Dodgers. This is from Rutardo. He says, if Dave Robertson won a legitimate World Series, he would be entitled to an off year. However, the Dodgers have had the best team in baseball for a dozen years, and year after year, he chokes. He crumbles in the playoffs. A team with that much talent is built to win, not crumble under pressure. Dave Roberts must go.
A lot of people feel that way, but please understand it. And I'm not defending Dave Roberts across the board entirely, but the people in the analytics department, they give him a piece of paper every game and say, this is what we recommend you do. First man up in the bullpen, first guy off the bench pinch hitting. These are the metrics as it relates to left-handed versus right-handed. So he plays off a script all the time. So it's not all his decisions. That being said, you can screech this year, but pal, they've had 18 pitchers on the disabled list this season. 18, and they're still in first place. And they got a large chunk of the season with no Mookie Betts and nothing from Max Muncy, and they're still in first place. I think the most intangible thing that Dave Roberts does, John, is manage the personalities in the clubhouse. And there's a lot of guys making a lot of money, and there could be a lot of potential issues there. They've never had clubhouse issues there as compared to what happened down at Petco Park a couple years in a row with Soto and Machado and who's
Bob Melvin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Dave Roberts has done a pretty good job there. I don't know that he's in jeopardy. He's got another year to go on this contract, and we'll see. But for them to be in first place despite all the trauma with all the injuries, that to me is really impressive.
Kind of makes me think of your old colleague Jim Rome, just scoreboard, first place. I mean, you can't argue with that. I saw this clip that Dave Roberts came out of the dugout, went to the mound, looked like he was going to maybe change the pitcher, but he didn't. He talked to them and found out that the runner didn't touch second base properly.
That came from Clayton Kershaw in the dugout.
Is that where it came from?
Kershaw yelled out there he did not go back and retouch second base in the game last night.
Yes.
The guy got called out because Dodgers wound up losing the game at the end.
It's good baseball IQ.
Yes, paying attention to detail.
Yeah, so Kershaw, he was the one that spotted it. But Dave Roberts is just a good dude, and I the story that I have about him is that my son was playing baseball. We were over at what's the school out in Rancho Santa Fe? It's like a Christian school, and they were playing Poway High in a preseason game, and I was in the stands with the fans or with the parents, and all of a sudden I heard a voice. It sounded kind of familiar, and I turned over like 3 seats down. It was Dave Roberts was there because his kid played for Santa Fe Christian. That was the school. But is he still like he doesn't live in San Diego anymore, but he's got a lot of connections here.
Oh yeah, very much so. He played here, and his family was here, and he came from a military family. He's a really special human being. A lot of people don't know he's a cancer survivor.
Nice.
And
Wow.
he came up and he grabbed me on the arm one day at Petco Park. I was walking, I don't know, from the dugout to somewhere else, and he grabbed me and said, "I want to tell you something about your talk show." And I thought, oh,
Here we go.
yeah, here we go. I'm going to get it now. He said, "I want to thank you." And I said, "For what?" He said, "I was told that while I was having these cancer treatments, you did a commentary about us all being the same, not a ball player, not a talk show host, whomever. And you said people should pray for Dave Roberts."
Yeah.
And that was really cool
Yeah. Yeah.
because I thought he was going to be crap about the fact, why'd you get picked off first base?
Well, someone's always got something to say to you, right? Either
Nice
good
man,
or
though.
bad.
Nice person.
Yeah, he's always struck me as a good dude. And why did the Padres not interview him for a manager position here? Doesn't seem like a blown call there.
Please address your memo to AJ Preller.
Okay.
Okay. You know, it's why they fire a good guy like Bud Black. Please address that memo to AJ Preller.
Okay, I got to get your typewriter and I can bang it out. Bang out
Hey,
that
thank
memo.
you for the question. Go ahead. Next one.
Next one. Okay, let's talk here about the Raiders. And this is from Dave. And he says, "Sorry to disappoint, Lee, but White is going to make you forget all about Josh Jacobs, who I cheered for and wanted to stay with us. But White looked great at the end of the year with a bunch of 10-yard clips every time he carried the ball."
Okay, he's talking about a second-year running back from Georgia, I believe, Zamir White. Big physical specimen. He's got to prove he can do it. I mean, do it on a consistent basis. It's one of the question marks with the Raiders. Question one is obviously who's the quarterback. Question two, you lost a lot of heavy-duty yardage that Josh Jacobs got you. Question three, do you really have a good offensive line to help Colton Miller, the left tackle? They think they do. Only time's going to tell. And then the fourth question, can Zamir White be the replacement and do all the things Josh Jacobs did? Because Jacobs is really, really productive, and his mailing address is now up with the Green Bay Packers. So that's that side of the ball. To me, they got a lot of question marks. Defensively, and John and I talked about this about a week ago, the addition of Christian Wilkins, who came from Miami, defensive tackle, is huge because now you got a stud who makes things happen. I mean, he is as active a defensive tackle as I think modern-day football has seen. And now you got Max Crosby on one side, got another guy doesn't have a sexy name, but plays really well and is very active. His name is Mal Kuntz. He's on the other side. I love their linebackers, led by Diablo, their inside linebacker, and they've added to the linebacking core, Robert Spillane. I got questions about do they have enough in the secondary. I do think the Raider front seven defensively is going to be better, so that's an upgrade. But can they answer all the question marks that I have on the offensive side of the football? So, no, you're correct. Zamir White at the end last year, but got a 17-game schedule ahead of us. Can he be that guy?
I'm anxious to see how this Raider thing goes.
Yeah.
And the Chargers too. We just don't understand what it's going to all end up being. But you were talking about the defense and you're confident in the Raiders. Are they running a 3-4 or a 4-3?
They've flipped it back to a 4-3.
Okay.
And they're going to, they got two defensive tackles and they got the two edge guys. The edge guys are really dynamic. Hey, last year's number one draft pick had hardly played. He was hurt. He's a defensive end. He was to me, he was a surprise pick. They bypassed some other guys. I'll just be intrigued to see if the young guys can now take the next step up. But I'll tell you, Christian Wilkins is unbelievably active for a big man. I was stunned Miami didn't pay him the price and let him walk.
Wow. I mean, it's great. The NFL is great when the Raiders are relevant because they become like the Yankees in baseball, the Death Star, the dark side.
Used to be,
but
yep.
they still will play that up. It's all part of the brand.
You're not a Raider fan, going to run down the hallway and get the Super Bowl trophy. It's dusty and dented and bring it out and say, see? Well, it's 1975, pal. See?
Well, yeah. I mean, that again, I was a Niners Raiders guy growing up and then loved the Chargers when they were in San Diego. And then when the Chargers moved to LA, I was like, I'm going to go root for my Raiders again. And that's kind of where I am.
So, it's interesting. I mean, we all know Mahomes and all of his buddies, Travis Swift's boyfriend and all that in Kansas City and all the storylines. Then you got the Chargers. Can they keep the quarterback healthy? Who's going to be the running back to replace the all-purpose greatness? Do they have any wide receivers? So that's the Charger question. I just ran through the Raider question. And the whole Denver storyline is second year Sean Payton, now that it's his team, his roster, going to do well. And by the way, speaking of the Broncos, sidebar comment, Bo Nix is going to start at quarterback this weekend.
Ha. So you go from number 3 to number 1.
Yeah, he went 16 for 21, his first game coming off the bench, and now he's going to be the starter. So there's so many unique questions that we want to pay attention to, aside from the Swifties and the Chiefs and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, teams 2, 3, and 4 in the division. Fascinating couple of weeks going towards opening day. And by the way, when we get to Labor Day weekend, we are going to do an NFL preview. We're going to go division by division. That will tell you when that is going to occur. Let's do one more here.
Okay, we'll get one more social media in, and let's go here, talk a little MLB regular season with Bert. He says the regular season is meaningless. It's who's the hottest team going into the playoffs, and that is who usually does best. 2 or so great starting pitchers will take a team far. That's what's important in my opinion. Not sure either team, he's talking about the Padres or Dodgers, has that with their current roster. Maybe if some of the pitchers on the IL make it back.
Are you hot? Are you healthy? Those are 2 most important things when we get to the first weekend of October. Now, please understand this, and I say this as it relates to the Dodgers, and I say this as it relates to the Padres, for example. Your starting pitching may be well in slots, but pal, when you get to postseason, you're playing really good teams. If you get to the second round, you're playing really tougher teams. So you better have depth. You better have starting pitching, and if you got to go to the pen early, then you better have a lot of numbers in the bullpen, because you're going to be calling on these guys to snuff out rallies. Why? Because once you get to the second and third round, you're playing really good batting orders. I'm sorry, there's no Marlins, Pirates, or Rockies in postseason play. So that's why it's really important. If the Dodgers can be healthy, get all their pitchers back to whom they used to be, they're going to be a force. And for the Padres, they got the best bullpen in baseball, the deepest bullpen in baseball right now. They got 7 deep that I think you can trust, whether you need to go to them the 5th inning or the 8th inning or setups to get to Robert Suarez. But the playoffs, it's such a different animal because, like I say, you're not playing the Marlins, Pirates, Rockies, or White Sox in postseason.
But, the Padres have great starting pitching. I mean, I saw power rankings for the MLB best pitchers, top 10, and the Padres had 2 of them with Cease and King.
Yes.
So that Soto trade is actually working out not so bad. The Dodgers are the team to worry about. You just don't know what they're going to get with all those players. Hey, before we wrap this up, though, John was commenting. He goes like, "Hey, how come we weren't talking about Kaepernick?" And he's right. I was scrolling through all of these comments so fast that I missed a few. But let's just at least get John in here because we want to talk a little bit about Kaepernick. Add on. Here we go. He says, "Is Harbaugh trying to charter himself already?" Kaepernick will chase off a few fans that Dean has.
Well, I gave a different presentation. If Kaepernick wants to get into coaching, and he's a smart dude, I happen to think he's a good guy. If he wants to get into coaching, what better way than the guy he used to play for, who's quite a bright light intellectually with football. But he made the comment yesterday that he really still thinks he'd like to play or try to play at age 36, age 37. Right place, right time, right guy. Chargers have a desperate need for a backup quarterback. And you got 3 weeks to get Harbaugh ready from cardiovascular point to be able to run and do what he needs to do. And he's a smart guy and he knows the playbook or a piece of the playbook because he played for Harbaugh. It kind of makes sense to me. I guess I'm setting aside all the fans' reaction because first thing out of your mouth will be something toxic from somebody that look what he did and what does he represent with a flag, etc. But like I said, I went and learned a lot more about Kaepernick, the person, when he was away from football and what he did charity-wise, what he's still doing charity-wise. It kind of changed my view of what Kaepernick did against the fans that one day with the flag. So I'd take a gamble. I don't know if Harbaugh's willing to take a gamble. Is it too late in the game for him to look at a different quarterback who's been out of football? Maybe it is. Maybe I'm throwing spitballs against the wall that are not going to stick. I don't know. John, your turn.
I just wish people would kind of get over it, because, a lot of times the people that are all like fired up about America and they're offended that someone knelt during the national anthem. Usually these people are pretty Christian, so it's like, forgive, let's give this guy a second chance. Let's give him a chance to come back and redeem himself. If not as a quarterback, why not as a counselor, consultant, or even as a coach? because he still has something to offer.
I think he does. And the other factor in the equation, we'll go through NFL rosters. I see a lot of troubled guys who've been in real serious trouble.
Exactly.
That have been given 7 second chances. Guys coming off suspensions, guys coming out of rehabs, guys who lost their jobs because of domestic abuse. And there's a bunch of those dudes still playing in the NFL now after they, quote, serve their sentence. Well, his sentence has gone 7 years. Is it because he's toxic? Is it because of what he did with the flag? Or is it because he was coming off shoulder surgery and a lot of people don't think that maybe he can play any longer? Or is it because he has to be in a specialized offense to do what he does? I thought if he had gone to Baltimore to be the backup to Lamar Jackson, that's his offense, run and throw. But it didn't get done. Of course, that was 4 years ago. And at that point, he was still younger and he thought, I want big money. I want starter salary. Well, now he's a backup unemployed. He'd have to come in for the minimum because the Chargers have salary cap problems. So maybe you give him a look, but maybe it's too late in the offseason. Maybe this conversation probably should have occurred in February after Harbaugh got hired, because then they would have had all this time to get him in the building, get him acclimated to the physicality of the NFL, because he's been out of it for so long, and they could have taught him the playbook back then. This might be a little bit late in the game now.
Has there ever been an NFL player that's taken like 7 years off and then come back?
Not that I know. The guys who took a year off that came back and weren't never the same player again.
Exactly. And they wouldn't be in football shape, because they've just been like regular people like us, and so I can't see any scenario where he plays, although it's fun to think about. But as a counselor consultant, yeah, why not? I mean, the Chargers need some help with their backup quarterback.
And with their learning curve. Let him learn about what it's like to be a coach, because I think he's really intellectual. He went to Nevada, Reno, and he graduated. And my whole attitude about him changed the more research I did about what he did for charities and foundations and what he's still doing today, even though he's been out of football for a long period of time. So we'll see where it goes. I guess if I set my heart aside and start thinking with my head, hey, dummy, it's the middle of August. You can't bring somebody out of 7 years retirement, get him NFL ready, and get him into the playbook in such a short period of time. So we'll see if this is more about coaching than or is his heart wanting to play again.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Hey, listen, we hope you've enjoyed what we